Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in the Bronx, New York. It is August 1st at about 1:25 in the morning, and I wanted to take a moment to prepare something for you, to go over what's in the news right now about Donald Trump, about black women, black reporters, the events at the National Association of the Black Journalists that happened last night. On Friday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be joining with my friend Larry Sharpe, a libertarian who has formerly run for governor of New York. I will be joining him on Friday to talk about this event, the National Association of Black Journalists, and their interview with Donald Trump in full. We're going to both react. Now, Larry Sharpe is a libertarian. I am a Republican, a conservative Republican. So we have differing views. I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. Larry absolutely is not. And so this should be very interesting to see how we both are reacting to the same information. But before that event happens, I want to take an opportunity to go over probably the most critical moment of the entire event. Now, to be clear, I've seen the entire interview once so far. What I go over with you right now will be the second time, and with Larry, I'll be going through the entire thing for the second time. I think there's something that needs to be very clear before we move forward. A little bit of background here. Donald Trump went into this event, and it's probably the third most hostile interview that he has done in 2024. According to my friend Larry Sharpe, who was at the Bitcoin convention just last week, he mentioned that Donald Trump did very poorly there, worse than with the Libertarian Party. And I think that this interview with the National Association of Black Journalists was more hostile to Donald Trump than the Libertarian Party convention. So I think that's kind of critical and something important to understand as we look at this event. Donald Trump was walking into a very hostile audience. He knew that there were individuals there in the news media that don't like him. They are never Trumpers. They have TDS. And they were looking to get a gotcha moment. They were looking to entrap him or cause an outburst of some sort to gain momentum for Kamala Harris and to get eyeballs for their various news stations. That's the environment he walked into. Something that we don't see with Kamala Harris or Joe Biden. To be fair, RFK Jr. went to the Libertarian Party, which was hostile to him. He went to the RFK Jr. went to the Freedom Fest event, also somewhat lukewarm, a mixed event for him. But Donald Trump has been the only candidate who's truly gone into hostile territory to do interviews, and he is doing them. So I think that's something of note and should be pointed out. There's another thing that I think is very important as we have this discussion, because it's in part about Kamala Harris. And I think it's something that's unclear, and the media is making sure that it remains unclear. In America, there is the word black. Being a black person in America is synonymous with being an African American, but they're not the same thing. Those terms are very different. In fact, we did a short video earlier this week talking about that. You see, yes, Kamala Harris is technically black. According to the way I was raised in schools, there are only four types of people. There are those who are white, black, Asian, and indigenous people. That would be Eskimos or Native American Indians, Samoans, that kind. So there's the only four types of people that exist on the planet, and everyone falls into one of those four categories. So that would mean that people from India, people from the Middle East, people in South America would fall under black, just like Africans would, under that category. Now, I'm sure it's changed in science because we have transracial individuals. I won't go there. But that's the basis that I grew up with, and very likely the same kind of logic that Donald Trump grew up with. More importantly, That's where a lot of black culture has been, with that same definition. So yes, Kamala Harris would be black, just like any African would be black, like anyone from the Middle East or South America would be black. Fine. But that doesn't make them African American, nor is Kamala Harris. See, that's a very unique thing because that's cultural, that's societal, that has to do with the environment of America itself. And so while you may be from Angola or from Jamaica, that doesn't make you African American. It does mean you're black, but there is a societal difference. There is a cultural difference. It's not the same thing. Again, in America, we use the term synonymous of black and African American as if they're the same thing. They're not. There is a significant difference between the two. So when you hear individuals, and within the black community, there is a discussion about this, just like there was with Obama, who is half white and half black. And many people in the black community did not accept Barack Obama because he is half white. Many of them saw him as not black. He grew up in an environment that wasn't African American, spending time in Kenya, his time in Hawaii. He wasn't what would be normally seen as a kid from Chicago or a kid from LA or New York City or Boston or Detroit. Very different. And therefore that difference put him as an outsider in certain cultural views. That's the environment that we see Kamala Harris in. In many environments in America, many urban locations, she would be seen as an outsider. She would not be seen as African American. Would she be seen as black? Absolutely. But would she be seen as African American? No. And Kamala Harris herself has said she is Indian, she is Asian, and yes, she is also American. And of course, she is black. But that doesn't make her African American. This is important to understand, and if you understand that, which is cultural and societal, then you can understand some of the questions that came up in the National Association of Black Journalists questions for Donald Trump, because they're taking advantage of that. They know there is a cultural component, a societal component, as well as a visual component. And they're playing with that to try to trap Donald Trump and to gin up a lot of black voters and put them on the side of Kamala Harris. At least that's what I think the ABC reporter Rachel Scott was trying to do. That's the environment she was trying to create, and to an extent she succeeded. So with that understood, I'm actually going to be, you'll hear the audio, I'll be seeing the transcript of the event, and as we go through it, and I'll speak a little bit about that. Keep in mind, this event was supposed to be 1 hour with Donald Trump on the stage, but due to the technical issues of the National Association of Black Journalists, they screwed up their time. They caused an issue. It wasn't Donald Trump. It was their technical issues that caused problems, not only in getting the event started. It also had issues with sound, which was commented on by people who were watching it live because there was no audio for YouTube for part of the beginning of it. And there were mic issues, so it was difficult for some of the people on stage to hear each other speaking, even though it would seem to us in the audience that we could hear all of them. They couldn't hear each other. So this is the environment that we have. It's a hostile audience. It's very hostile members of the news media. We have technical issues that are affecting the way people can hear each other and communicate. And there are individuals who are playing games with the words themselves to try and create a political event. Now, this woman in the blue, that is Rachel Scott of ABC News. ABC News has been attacking Donald Trump for 7 years. They do not like Donald Trump, like most of the mainstream news media, which are left-leaning. And ABC News is a left-leaning news media source. Rachel Scott, who works for ABC News, also does not like Donald Trump. She has a distinct disdain for him, and you will see that as we move forward. But that is something that is apparent, and that was baggage brought into the event. But as we can see, Donald Trump is so far very cordial.
How are you? How are you?
Mr. President, we so appreciate you giving us an hour of your time. I want to start by addressing the elephant in the room, sir.
So, Rachel Scott starts off, and she wastes no time. She barely has time to be pleasant to introduce or to welcome Donald Trump to the event. Her tone is not friendly at all. She is preparing to attack. She's very aggressive, and her positioning is very aggressive. Now, that means that Trump, who's been through a few news interviews before, can see what is coming, as we can as well watching this.
A lot of people did not think it was appropriate for you to be here today.
Some of the background about the event. Many of the black journalists do not like Donald Trump. They think he's racist. Mind you, there is no evidence of his racism. There's a lot of accusations of racism, but there's no proof. Not from the days of the NAACP, not during his time as president, not now. Insensitive? Maybe. Racist? No, that doesn't exist. So there are some who had serious objections to being able to hear from a presidential candidate to answer questions and to see whether or not they should vote for him. That doesn't seem to make sense. Their job as journalists is to ask anyone in power questions and to provide those questions and those answers to the public. That's the job. That's what you do. It's not personal. You don't have to like the person you interview. In fact, let me take a second here. Let me be very clear. I've been doing political commentary for 18 years. I have interviewed over the last 18 years individuals who are progressives, Democrats, libertarians, conservatives, Republicans. I have done interviews with individuals I don't like. I have done interviews with individuals who have ideologies that I find repugnant. And yet, in all of that time, I have treated each and every one of them with respect and done the interviews anyway, whether that's someone who's in an elected office or a candidate or someone on the street. It doesn't matter. The job is to ask the question and to get the answer. I've done that for 18 years. Many people in independent media and also in the mainstream have done that because that's the job. It's not about your personal feelings. You put that aside when you start doing the interview. If you want to attack that person, if you don't like them or their ideology, you can always have political commentary or go onto social media and vent your personal feelings in your personal time. But when you're doing the interview, you should be relatively neutral, and more importantly, you should be cordial, at least, to the individual you're interviewing. That's how I handle it. That's how I understand that the news media should always react, but that's not what Rachel Scott is doing.
You have pushed false claims about some of your rivals, from Nikki Haley to former President Barack Obama, saying that they were not.
Now, this again shows us that there are issues that are happening at the National Association of Black Journalists at their convention, because we can see for some reason this pops up in their live feed. This is what people are seeing live in the event. So they're having a lot of technical issues, which is not just with the microphones and the sound, but obviously in the broadcast itself. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But notice what she's saying, which may distract people. That Donald Trump, she feels, has said things that were untrue. But most presidents have said things from time to time that are untrue. Most recently, Joe Biden says that the United States economy is doing well. I would tell you and have said that since August of 2022, the United States has been in a recession. We have inflation that is up well over 20, possibly up as much as 40%. We have unemployment at 4.1%. We have high interest rates at the same time. There is a slowdown in the economy. These aren't positives. People can't afford buying homes and they're having difficulty buying food. That's not a good economy. And yet Joe Biden consistently has said, and Kamala Harris has said, that the United States economy is good and sound and people should be happy. Doesn't make sense. Would that be a lie? Yes, many people would say it is. But yet Joe Biden and Kamala Harris don't get treated in the same way as Donald Trump. When President Obama looked at the American people and said, you can keep your doctor, which was the greatest lie of 2013, well, you can't. And yet he wasn't treated the same way as Donald Trump. So there's a bit of political partisanship here. But let's go on.
Told four congresswomen of color who were American citizens to go back to where they came from. You have used words like animal and rabid to describe black district attorneys.
Now, Donald Trump has he has denigrated individuals that he doesn't like. It's not just black individuals. Many people may remember that back in 2016, Rosie O'Donnell was one of the first who were constantly attacking Donald Trump, and Donald Trump had no kind words for her either. And Rosie O'Donnell isn't black. And he's had many words for individuals like Sleepy Joe, and he had his comments about Ted Cruz and others, that when he is in the campaign, on the campaign trail, as well as for individuals he doesn't like, he has many comments. North Korea's leader he would call Rocket Man. So it's not isolated to any one group of individuals. It's not isolated to any one sex of individuals. He has said this about many people. You don't have to like it. These are the mean tweets that people are very upset about with Donald Trump. That's his nature. There is nothing in the Constitution that says that a president has to be a nice person or a pleasant person. America has had many presidents that are unpleasant or rude or difficult. That doesn't change their ability to do the job. So this is kind of irrelevant, to be fair. But it is modern media where people think and have been told that you should like the person that's president when it's absolutely useless for doing the job of a president. But let's go on.
You've attacked black journalists, calling them a loser, saying the questions that they ask are, quote, stupid and racist.
He wasn't saying that because they were black. He said that to white reporters as well. He has said that to male and female reporters. So the way that Rachel Scott is presenting this, one, it is an attack. Two, it is personal in the way she is presenting it, in the tone that she is presenting it, and the way that she is wording the question. This is meant to be denigrating to Donald Trump. And you notice she hasn't asked a question. He said these things. He said many things to many people, but she's trying to make it hyper-racial when that isn't an accurate representation of what Donald Trump has done. While you could say he has been very denigrating to people he doesn't like, that isn't based on race or gender or any other factor than he doesn't like them, and some of them for good reason.
You've had dinner with a white supremacist at your Mar-a-Lago resort.
I want to stop here with the white supremacist. You had dinner with white supremacists. Now, as I covered at the time, I had inside sources at that dinner. I know who they're speaking about. In fact, I will mention it's Nick Fuentes. And this was when Kanye West was trying to decide whether he would run for the presidency of the United States. And many people thought it was because Kanye West was off of his meds, and he suffered because of that financially as well as professionally. But Donald Trump had dinner with Kanye because they know each other. And I knew some of the individuals involved in that dinner. And they spoke to me about that. And I have some inside information, which I discussed at the time. Donald Trump didn't know who Nick Fuentes was. The media never asked that question. Is he someone that you have business dealings with, or professional dealings with, or political interactions with? Because the answer to all of those is no. Donald Trump had never met him before. He wasn't invited to the dinner. Kanye brought Nick Fuentes to the dinner as a +1. Not that Donald Trump invited him. Donald Trump invited Kanye West. Fuentes showed up because he was grifting on Kanye West, both for money and for the ability to get attention, because obviously being at dinner with Donald Trump is something that would grab headlines, so that he could push, Nick Fuentes could push his personal agenda. But that was never intentional, nor was it something that was planned for. So, if I know this, and Rachel Scott has access to many of the sources that I'm speaking about at that event, she knows it too. So does ABC, NBC, all of the mainstream news media have investigated this. They know as well, from some of the same sources that I have, that Donald Trump did not invite Nick Fuentes to dinner. He did not know who Nick Fuentes was. Kanye West invited and brought Nick Fuentes, who was a hanger-on to Kanye West's consideration of being a presidential candidate. That's important. Context matters, which is something that Rachel Scott is counting on not being present. She doesn't want context. She wants emotion. She wants to make an attack. This is a political hatchet job that she is preparing and in the process of doing, because she knows it will get attention. This is to push a political agenda and partisanship. Rachel Scott is being unprofessional at an immense degree of unprofessionalism, allowing her personal feelings and her partisan political ideology to interfere with her job.
So my question, sir, now that you are asking black supporters to vote for you, why should black voters trust you after you have used language like that?
Well, first of all, I don't think.
So before Trump says anything, again, she has misrepresented the situation. She loaded the dice. This is a trick question, because she knows that much of what she said is out of context and incorrect. Yet she doesn't care. This was about emotions. This was her way of saying, Donald Trump, you're a racist. It's very unfair, and it's unprofessional. And honestly, I would like to see, I think, based on her performance throughout the entire event, I would say that Rachel Scott needs to be fired. But that's my opinion of that. Let's hear how Donald Trump addresses this.
I think I've ever been asked a question in such a horrible manner. First question. You don't even say, hello, how are you? Are you with ABC? Because I think they're a fake news network, a terrible network. And I think it's disgraceful that I came here in good spirit. I love the black population of this country. I've done so much for the black population of this country, including employment, including opportunity zones with Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, which is one of the greatest programs ever for black workers and black entrepreneurs. I've done so much, and and I say this, historically black colleges and universities were out of money. They were stone cold broke, and I saved them, and I gave them long-term financing, and nobody else was doing it. I think it's a very rude introduction. I don't know exactly why you would do something like that. And let me go a step further. I was invited here, and I was told my opponent, whether it was Biden or Kamala, I was told my opponent was going to be here. It turned out my opponent isn't here.
So let's stop for a second. So we've gotten his answer to the question. which isn't a direct answer per se, but it is an answer. It's not the answer that Rachel Scott wants. It's not the answer that the TDS and ABC News, it's not the answer they want. The answer is, you're trying to trap me. You're trying to call me a racist, and I think that's rude and disrespectful, and it doesn't actually help any black individual, any male or female, any American to decide whether or not they should vote for Donald Trump, because it's the information she put there is almost entirely out of context, and it lacks critical information that she is aware of and decided not to put forward. So it's not very fair. She leaves out things like Donald Trump's relationship with individuals like Dr. Ben Carson, who was part of the Trump administration. She has nothing to say about that. Isn't he black too? Donald Trump has famously worked with many black individuals, entertainers and others. She leaves that information out. She leaves out his NAACP awards that he's gotten over many years and the donations that Democrats happily accepted and events that they went to with Donald Trump and for Donald Trump. She leaves that out as well. Well, that's important context as well, because it goes against what she's trying to say. So this is loaded dice, and he's kind of said that. Now he's going on to say that the entire event, as it is right now, has been kind of rigged against him in a setup, because he was supposed to have Kamala Harris on the stage or Joe Biden on the stage. Mind you, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, they didn't go and speak to anyone at CPAC. They didn't go to the Libertarian Convention. They didn't go to Freedom Fest. They didn't go anywhere to actually speak to the American people. But Donald Trump has. RFK has. You're not seeing the Democrats do this. So it's very unfair. But let's hear what else the president has to say here.
Invited me under false pretense. And then you said, you can't do it with Zoom. Well, where's Zoom? She's going to do it with Zoom, and she's not coming. And then you were half an hour late. Just so we understand, I have too much respect for you to be late. They couldn't get their equipment working, or something was wrong.
Mr. President, I would love if you can answer the question on your rhetoric and why you believe
I have
that
answered
black
the
voters
question.
should trust you with another 4
I have
years.
been the best president for the black population since Abraham Lincoln.
Does Donald Trump embellish? Yes. Is that a flat-out lie? Not exactly, no. And, that is how he feels he has been as a president, that he's as good as Abraham Lincoln. People will dispute that. There are ways that you can argue for and against that, but that's his impression. That's where he believes he stands. That's not a lie. That's just his embellishment. And notice, yes, he has a tone where he is somewhat confrontational, and he is basically what we would call dressing down Rachel Scott. He is making sure she's aware that he's not going to take her gruff, her slap in the face. He's not going to take it sitting down, and he's going to react in kind. So that's important. Let's go on.
My answer.
Better than President Johnson, who signed the Voting Rights Act?
And for you to start off a question and answer period, especially when you're 35 minutes late because you couldn't get your equipment to work in such a hostile manner, I think it's a disgrace.
Let me just ask a follow-up, sir, and then we'll move on to other questions here. Some of your own support.
So she's not done. She's not done. He's been very clear that she has been disrespectful, she has been disgraceful, and she has. But she still has an agenda. She didn't get what she wanted, and so she's going to try again. Mind you, at this time, there are Twitter trolls going absolutely berserk. Individuals in the left-leaning news media are losing their minds over what Donald Trump has said and the manner, the tone that he has towards Rachel Scott. They're completely ignoring Rachel Scott's complicity, in fact, her initiation of the hostilities. That's not being reported to American people. That's not being discussed in memes that are going around saying black women are under attack. They're not. Rachel Scott is, because she started the fight, and he's responding in kind. There is a massive difference. Donald Trump didn't just come out and decide to be rude to Rachel Scott, something that he is not. He is not rude in the same manner, nor does he speak in the same way to anyone else on the stage, just Rachel Scott. And he is specific throughout the entire event that he has an animus against Rachel Scott because of the way she has handled herself in the first question. So you can't say, well, he's against black women, then why isn't he treating any of the other black women in that manner? It's only Rachel Scott. And when we look at the evidence, it's because of what Rachel Scott did, not because of Donald Trump intrinsically by himself. Something that's not being discussed in the news media. We have to be fair and honest about these things. Let me go on.
Including Republicans on Capitol Hill, have labeled Vice President Kamala Harris, who is the first black and Asian American woman to serve as vice president and be on a major...
Again, now we're going into black. Kamala Harris is black, not African American. And Rachel Scott knows the difference. She knows that she is using black based on the common usage in the United States, that black is synonymous with African American. It combines the visual racial aspect as well as the cultural and societal aspect. But that's not accurate, and she knows it.
Major party ticket as a DEI hire. Is that acceptable language to you? And will you tell those Republicans and those supporters to stop it?
How do you define?
Okay, so notice her question. Do you think that's acceptable? And when you tell them to stop it, in other words, it's not acceptable and you have to stop them. So again, Rachel Scott is playing word games here. So it's not acceptable, so you have to tell the other Republicans that they have to stop saying that. Why should they stop? First of all, we have a First Amendment. Anyone can say anything. Whether or not Kamala Harris or the Democratic Party like it is immaterial to the fact they have a right to say that, even if you don't like it. But let's go beyond that. Let's move ahead of that. Is Kamala Harris a DEI hire? An argument can be made, and I have made that argument in both posts on the internet as well as in videos, that yes, she is a DEI hire, because 95% of Democrats rejected her run for the presidency in 2019. So she wasn't hired because she was popular. She wasn't hired because she was effective. Her campaign was bankrupt. She had no support. So it's not because she's effective or that she's well respected or that she's influential. When she's gone to other countries, like in South Korea, she has insulted the leaders there and actually caused more tensions for the United States than she has resolved. She's not good at the job. So yes, there's a very credible argument to say that Kamala Harris was put in place very simply because she is a woman of color and just a woman. And that triggers some people to gain more votes. That's a fact. And that was part of the political math that Joe Biden needed to shore up a very difficult and close race to get the advantage he needed. So, yes, you can say that.
Define DEI. Go ahead. How do you define
diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Okay, yeah, go ahead. Is that what your definition?
That is
Give me a
literally
definition
the words
then. Would you give me a definition
DEI.
of that? Give me a definition.
Sir,
of
I'm
that.
asking you a question,
No,
a
you
very
have to
direct
define
question.
it. Define it for me, if you
I
would.
just defined it, sir. Do you believe that Vice President
Okay, so Donald Trump has made his position clear. Are we talking about the same thing? It's kind of what I've said about understanding the common understanding of what is black and what is the difference between black as a race and black as a societal or cultural aspect. So there is a definition there. And when we say DEI, well, what exactly do you mean by DEI? How define that? It's like when people say, well, what is woke? How do you define wokeness? That may differ between two different individuals. Are we talking about affirmative action, or are we talking about something else when we say DEI? And Rachel Scott, who is a member of the news media, a reporter, she knows this. She understands the question that is being asked of her. Now, either she doesn't know how to define DEI and what she means by DEI, or she doesn't care and she's just looking to try and trap Donald Trump.
Kamala Harris is only on the ticket because she is a black woman.
Well, I can say, no, I think it's maybe a little bit different. So I've known her a long time indirectly, not directly very much. And she was always of Indian heritage, and she was only promoting Indian heritage. I didn't know she was black until...
This isn't racist, because it's accurate. For much of her public career, Kamala Harris has emphasized her Indian nature, or her Indian heritage, and her Asian heritage, Eurasia. She's been very prominent about pointing those things out, using them as stepping stones, being the first to achieve certain titles with that. And so she's used that to her political advantage. And it was really only until she got into the presidential race that she started emphasizing being black, as in being African American culturally. That's when she really started to emphasize that. Not that she wasn't black as in she's Jamaican, which would be black like an African, not black like an American, African American. There is a significant difference. And she did change her tone of her campaign going into 2020 to emphasize black as in African American rather than black as in African. There is a difference. So Donald Trump isn't wrong in saying that. That isn't incorrect.
Until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black, and now she wants to be known as black. So I don't know, is she Indian or is she black?
She has always identified as a black woman. She went to a historically black college.
I respect either one.
So Rachel Scott is upset because, one, Donald Trump is correct, but also because she doesn't like the answer. She doesn't like the way the answer sounds. And because it is accurate for how Kamala Harris has used her race, her identity, her ethnicity, the way she's used it for political gain is being brought up, is being made transparent. So Rachel Scott doesn't like that. She supports Democrats. She supports Kamala Harris. So she's very upset right now.
But she obviously doesn't, because she was Indian all the way, and then all of a sudden she made a turn and she became a black person.
Just to be clear, sir, do you believe that
I think somebody should look into that too when you continue in a very hostile, nasty tone.
It's a direct question, sir. Do you believe that Vice President Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, as some Republicans have said?
I really don't know. I really don't know. Could be.
So she's re-asking a question she already asked, which is ill-defined. It is a bad question. So right now we're seeing a battle going on, a battle of words, a battle of politics, a battle of ideology. And Rachel Scott is using this platform to be able to try and club Donald Trump. And that's inappropriate. That's not the job of a journalist. If she wants to understand whether or not Donald Trump thinks that Kamala Harris is a DEI hire, in other words, that she was not the best qualified person for vice presidency, and that she was lifted up simply because of the color of her skin and her gender, then she should ask the question just like I did. The way I've defined it makes it very clear what I mean by DEI hire. Rachel Scott could do the same thing. She refuses to do so because she doesn't care what the answer is. She just wants to call Donald Trump a racist. And that's what she's doing. And this is why Donald Trump is reminding her that her tone is hostile and it is nasty. And so he doesn't need to play ball with that. Let's go on.
It could be. There are some, and there are plenty. I know this lady right over there, Harris, is a fantastic person who just interviewed me at length. And we had a great interview, I think, and I heard you got very good ratings on that
Well,
interview.
you told me it was the longest one of your life, so we had a good discussion. Look, I want to talk about why you're here today.
So I'm not going to go through the whole thing because I am going to be doing this with Larry Sharpe as a reaction to the entirety of it. But I think it's important that we understand. So in understanding in all this news media and all the memes that are out there saying that Donald Trump is somehow evil, that he is mean, he is so sexist and so racist, he's not. He's reaction. He's reacting to Rachel Scott. Rachel Scott is being racist. She's being partisan and political, and she's using her title as a journalist to allow her to wield a sledgehammer, a political sledgehammer, against someone she doesn't like. She's using the power of the news media to attack someone because of either her political ideology, her partisanship, or some other reason why she's attacking Donald Trump. So it's unfair. Now, you don't have to like Donald Trump. You don't have to like his policies. You don't have to like his tweets or the way he speaks or how he deals with people that he doesn't like. You don't have to have those feelings. Those are his feelings. You can have different feelings. He doesn't need to have your feelings in the same way. So you cannot like him, but that doesn't make him a racist. That doesn't make him a sexist. That doesn't make him inappropriate for the presidency. Just means you have an issue. And that has nothing to do with the performance of Donald Trump when he was president previously, nor does it give us an indication of why he would be appropriate or inappropriate for president going forward. I think this is important. And I'm looking forward to having this discussion with Larry Sharpe. Maybe Larry, who's a libertarian, who's not voting for Donald Trump, maybe he sees this in a different way. I don't think he will, per se, but it will be interesting. And I invite you to check out the conversation that Larry and I will have on Friday at 3 p.m. as we go through the entire event and what else happens, because there are several other critical questions that are asked. There are several critical answers that are given. There is the continuation of the battle between Rachel Scott of ABC News and Donald Trump. I look forward to seeing some of your comments here. I look forward to seeing if you have any questions for when I speak with Larry, and I hope you will join us as I speak with my friend Larry Sharpe on Friday at 3 p.m. In addition, keep an eye out. I will have interviews with some candidates coming up that'll be getting posted in the near term. And of course, on Friday night, I do have the Liberty First Foundation Friday Roundtable that we do every week. So I look forward to seeing you over this weekend. Lots of stuff is going to be going on. Thank you, and I hope you have a great night.